came out with their plan, and again, they're getting public response and reaction to it. The Senate's working on their plan, and again, they scheduled dates through the whole summer. I hope they come out with something end of June timeframe.
Sure.
But that's up to them.
Yeah.
And the way I viewed it is I'm staying relatively quiet in terms of I've had a plan out there for a long time. So I want to give each one of the chambers an opportunity to vet their plan, get public response, and then we should just be talking.
Sure.
And the goal is to hopefully have good discussions over the summertime, so there's something actionable, I hope, by the fall.
Sure. Now, I remember your plan from a few years ago, but can you reiterate it for me?
Yeah, and again, I've been happy to live with other variations, but the simplest version to look at was roughly about 2/3 came from gas tax and a third from registration fees in terms of new revenue.
Sure.
And again, there's pros and cons to different variations, but we do need some new revenue sources is what I normally calculate.
Sure. So proposal 1 didn't change your calculation at all on your own personal plan?
Well, again, what I would say is I doubt my personal plan is going to get adopted as written. And so I view it as it's within a reasonable range, though, of a plan that can really work. And I think there are other variations. If it's more just shifting between the two, that's just something I'm open to talking about as long as we get the answer.
Sure.
So I'm not as hung up on all the mechanics other than saying it's probably some combination of user-related fees in some fashion as new revenue sources, plus looking at what might be revenue growth or existing budget dollars, but we do need some new revenue.
Sure.
To get to the 1.2.
Yeah. You mentioned that House, there's been some public feedback now. You haven't said a whole lot about the plan, though, other than that you're glad they proposed it.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on the
No,
specifics?
that's all I'm going to stick to at this point, because again, I want them to get unfiltered commentary. Because if I start jumping in the dialogue, then I could bias the discussion to some degree, and I would rather have it be more open, unfiltered from the citizens.
Okay.
Are you comfortable with the idea that roads have to come first for economic development, and that's kind of why the House plan would cut a lot of economic development money?
Well, I think that's challenging to some degree. Again, I've been fairly clear to say I don't think it should necessarily be at the expense of other important programs, and I think that's what the public's been speaking about in many cases.
So you view our incentives for businesses as one of those important programs?
Yeah, that's something that is, again, important to long-term economic development, and I think you're seeing it's one of the factors that's showing up in our economic recovery today. And again, the cost of the programs we're doing today is a fraction of what we used to do. So we're being very efficient about our business development programs in terms of the return we're getting in relationship to their cost.
Governor, you've been critical of prevailing wage repeal legislation. It seems like as a result of that critique, a group is now organizing a petition drive to essentially go around you in this process. What do you think of that move, and would you still be a vocal opponent of the petition drive?
Yeah, well, again, that's democracy. This would not be the first time, as you know.
Sure.
And if you look at it, I don't believe prevailing wage is an issue that we should be addressing at this point, because I think there are higher priorities. And the reason I say that is I think this whole opportunity with the skilled trades is a much bigger, more important economic opportunity for Michigan. And that should be a very large coalition of people, including labor, all working together to fill tens of thousands of great, well-paying jobs in our state. If you look at the conference this week, one of the huge themes is going to be talent. And the skilled trades being a big piece of that. And so on a relative thing to say, here you have an opportunity that literally involves all these jobs, great well-paying jobs, versus the relative benefit, and again, people can argue the benefits of prevailing wage, it's an order of magnitude different over here.
Sure.
And so I don't really want to get into a very divisive atmosphere if I can help it, and let's be the best at leading in the skilled trades and career tech ed in the nation.
Sure. You mentioned it's the democratic process, but you could influence that democratic process with
I've already
composition.
made some. I've already made it pretty clear. I
Yeah.
don't think prevailing wage should come to my desk.
Well, if you go to petition.
Well, I think people can draw their own conclusions, but
Okay, sure.
Do you think it's a fundamental flaw in Michigan's system that the signatures of 300,000 people can essentially replace the governor in the process of making a law?
well, I think there's a fair question that people could ask by that. I mean, that's a whole question on. You can ask the broader one on recalls, all those different things. How many is an appropriate number of petitions and signatures? Because I think what we found is quite often now it's not necessarily a feature of people just signing petitions because they believe in this cause as much as people being solicited for signatures. But you have to respect democracy, and our system allows that.
Sure. So this morning we had the Skillman Foundation had a nice panel about the Detroit education. And John McColta is one of the panelists on there, CEO of Wallbridge, actually said that he believes that Detroit education and reform should be a higher legislative priority than fixing the roads. He says it's that important to the state. How confident are you that that you propose your plan? The coalition has submitted the report to you. What how confident are you going to have something worked out in the fall, from the legislature?
Yeah, well, I view it as we shouldn't be living life to say you can only do one thing. I believe in multitasking.
Sure.
So this is a case where I think over the summertime we can have a very good discussion, and that's one of the reasons I want to get my plan out there. That, again, I appreciate the coalition work. We incorporated many of the key aspects of what they proposed in our plan. There are some variations. There are a number of things that they proposed we didn't put in our plan, but those were largely things that I don't believe are appropriate for state statute, but are good ideas. And I think we'll get good feedback from legislators over the summertime, getting them up to speed on the issues, and hopefully we can take action. It is something that's important to get done, and I'd like to see it get done in the fall because, again, as school years come and go, you want to be prepared for the following
So
school.
you have to give the legislature a pep talk to get the leadership going again on more Detroit issues?
Well, I've been working on more Detroit issues as much as anyone, and I'm not fatigued.
Sure.
So I'm ready to keep going and keep solving problems.
Sure.
So again, it's not just about Detroit too, the school solutions we're talking about, because again, we have other schools throughout Michigan that are challenges, and I think we can learn from this experience to say, how can we come up with improvements that might apply to other places? So again, it's not just a Detroit issue. The focus is Detroit now. It's really the first place we're talking about some of these solutions, but it shouldn't be exclusive for Detroit.
Springboarding off your enthusiasm for the city. I see that the Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan was in Lansing while we were here pitching D insurance. I know that you have a plan to make no fault more competitive in the state. What do you think of this idea of kind of separating a city and having them create their own auto insurance program?
Well, I'm open-minded to the concept. The main issue that I have said, when you look at something in line with what they're proposing, is it needs to be done in a fashion where it doesn't come at the expense of other Michigan drivers or citizens. So the challenge is balancing it off, so hopefully we can get better coverage at a lower cost for auto insurance in Detroit, which is too expensive. And can we do that in a way where if someone happens to be involved in an accident with one of these drivers, they're not worse off than if they would have been involved in an accident with another Michigan driver.